Welcome everybody. It's Sunday morning and it's time for another episode of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day, brought to you by Mechanicsburg Learning Center. How's everybody doing? Gorgeous day in central Pennsylvania, and this is episode number 20. Very excited that we reached 20, so we're going to keep going and see it through and continue to make lemonade out of lemons. So today's animal is Quetzalcoatlus. Quetzalcoatlus, sometimes pronounced Quetzalcoatlus. It is not a dinosaur. It is a flying pterosaur. So as long as it's extinct, it could be part of our discussion. So this animal was discovered in 1971 in Texas. Now they say everything is big in Texas, and this is no exception. This animal, flying pterosaur, with a wingspan that we'll talk about in a little more detail, a big wingspan. So as it flew by, if you're a dinosaur and this thing flew over you, it could cause quite a shadow. Okay, so a couple things we'll point out about Quetzalcoatlus. First of all, its name means feathered serpent. It was an Aztec god named Quetzalcoatl, and they just put a US on the end of it and turned it into a flying pterosaur name. So named after a feathered serpent Aztec god. This thing had a wingspan, we believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 33 to 36 feet, which makes it as big as a small fighter jet. Did it fly? We're pretty sure it flew, but there are some scientists that are saying, no, it was too big and gangly to fly, and it couldn't flap its wings, and it couldn't take off. There has been conjecture regarding the subject of this, did this thing fly, ever since it was discovered by Douglas Lawson. So he discovered it in Texas, 1971, ended up naming it in 1975. Now, I want to show you something that has changed over the years. Its beak. This is more of a blunt beak, a little similar to some other flying pterosaurs. But this is really how we believe it looked. It was pointed. This is what this guy would look like when it was crouched on the ground. Okay, take a look at the beak. Okay, definitely pointed, toothless. All right, there was not a single tooth in there. You can just see his eyeball right here. Okay, and then he's got this lovely crest. And when he stood up straight and walked around, he was as tall as a giraffe. So this thing was a big animal. Its head was big, its wings were wide. At one point, some of the estimates were this thing had a wingspan of 40 feet. It's come back a little bit to somewhere in between 33 and 36. They have discovered other species of it, not genus. Genus is a Quetzalcoatlus and it has a second name. So they've discovered other Quetzalcoatlus that may be slightly different and maybe slightly smaller, and this is a size comparison of those. So in green, you have the official Quetzalcoatlus. In blue, you have another Quetzalcoatlus that was discovered, which was, we're not sure if it's a juvenile or possibly just a completely different species, but related to Quetzalcoatlus. And you want to see how big we would be compared to this thing? Okay, get the picture? This thing was big, very big. Weight, we're not sure. Some folks think it weighed about 180 pounds. I've seen estimates as I do the research for these segments, anywhere from 180 pounds to 1,200 pounds and more. So we do know that it had hollow bones, like birds. However, we also know it's not related to birds. The pterosaurs went extinct, while the dinosaurs eventually evolved into birds. So how did it fly? Well, as we said, it's so big and bulky, we're not sure if it could just start flapping and take off, or if it needed to get a running start, or if it just hung out on cliffs and basically soared back and forth. It may have used something we call thermal soaring, which is it finds a way to get into the air, and then it hardly has to flap at all. It can just ride the wind currents and the rising warm air. So there's still conjecture on it. I personally believe that it probably did fly. I don't think there'd be a reason for it to evolve such gigantic wings and not be able to fly. There are flightless birds today, the ostrich, the emu, the penguin, but you don't see these gigantic wings on those things. So hollow bones, so it didn't weigh too much. Sharp pointed beak. This thing lived somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 65 million years ago. And it's been discovered in many different areas, but the most complete skeleton so far has been from Texas. There is now discussion that it may not be possibly the largest flying reptile ever. When it was discovered, there was nothing close to it. However, there was something discovered fairly recently called, let me see if I can get this name correctly, Hatzegopteryx. Hatzegopteryx. Hatzegopteryx could possibly be larger, could possibly be the same size. It's still too early to tell, and still not enough bones have been discovered for us to make a firm decision on how large this guy was and compared to Quetzalcoatlus. So, Quetzalcoatlus, not an easy name to say, named after an Aztec god, and didn't have a poem about this. So when I was discussing this last evening with my son Ethan, who does all my illustrations for my books, he said, "Have you ever written a poem about Quetzalcoatlus?" I said, "No. Let me go downstairs in the computer." So we got one. So brand new, never heard before by human ears. Quetzalcoatlus by Mr. Mike, and soon to be illustrated by my son Ethan. I dreamed last night that I could fly quite high into the air, and once I reached an altitude, I met a creature there. At first, I thought it was a plane, perhaps a fighter jet. I flapped my arms to get as close as I could safely get. I noticed that it made no sound as I approached this thing. As I drew near, I saw it move a giant flappy wing. It was alive, and in my dream, I'm sure that I cried out. But what the heck was this thing doing as it flied about? It slowly lowered one long arm, which caused it to bank right, allowing me to sail above and get a perfect sight. I tried to measure in my brain how wide this creature was. I thought my mind was playing tricks. Sometimes that's what it does. I flew across the airborne beast. How long? I cannot say. Glanced up, looked down, and realized I was not even halfway. This thing was huge and barely had to flap for it to fly. It rode upon a wind gust as it glided through the sky. So what exactly was this beast that I had come across? I racked my brain to think of one because I was at a loss. This morning I remembered my exhilarating flight and figured out which pterosaur I'd flown with just last night. It was Quetzalcoatlus. There's a name that's hard to say. It's Aztec for a feathered serpent god to whom they'd pray. Its wingspan measured over 30 feet and maybe more, and since it flew, it can't be classified a dinosaur. It sure is fun to have those wondrous dreams where you can fly and soar amongst the ancient beasts that used to rule the sky. But if you never get the chance to soar around and look, at least your mind can hit new heights when you pick up a book. The Quetzalcoatlus by Mr. Mike, soon to be illustrated by my son Ethan. I want to thank you guys for sharing these videos for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. We will do another one tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you share this, make sure you share it on Facebook, and if you'd like to watch it on YouTube, you can now go to my YouTube page. It has all of our 20 videos. It is at Mr. Mike Sgrignoli. Just look that up and you'll find all 20 Dino-A-Day videos. So until tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time, this is Mr. Mike and Quetzalcoatlus for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. Have a great day.